Welcome back to the latest edition of Until Saturday, and we are talking football today. The best part of football, really, quarterbacks. I'm Ari Wasserman, joined by two of my close buddies here at The Athletic. Max Olson, how are you today?
Doing good, buddy. I'm home for a rare day here in August, so lots of affairs to get through here, but happy to knock this one out.
I'm sure you don't miss me since we've spent every waking moment together this entire month, but
I do. Your vacation spot there looks glorious.
Yeah, a little Airbnb action in front of the Pacific Ocean. We don't have running water hot running water, so we've been boiling pans and pouring it into the bathtub to bathe our child at night. But we got 50% off of what we thought we were going to pay for. So, worked out well for me.
That's called glamping. Isn't that called glamping?
Yes. Yeah. Right. And hopefully it'll turn back on and we'll keep the deal. Dave, what's going on? I saw you were in Boulder and, I don't know did you buy property there yet or what?
We're working on it. I need to run by my wife if she would take that trade, the 50% off for no hot water. I feel like I know the answer to that, and it is almost certainly no.
The 50% off thing was great because 50% off wasn't like $300. Like it was a lot of money for the house that we got.
Yeah.
So and Britt was like, "Hey, maybe we should move houses." And I'm like, "What's more inconvenient? Packing up our entire house with the baby and going somewhere else that we don't know if it works in a worse location, or just taking a cold shower and boiling water for the baby and getting half off?" And we chose the right one. So feeling pretty good about it.
You're doing like minute-long cold showers? That's what you're doing?
Well, I don't know if you know this about me. You do, Max. I take, because of Dan Rubenstein at the Solid Verbal, I take 45-second cold showers at the end of every shower I do anyway, so it's not that big of a deal for me. But for the baby and for my wife, I can understand why that would be uncomfortable. And, every now and then the hot water kicks on. So I'm going to try to stay out.
Enlightened when it comes to that.
Yeah. No,
Ari, is it to avoid the post-shower sweat?
Dan Rubenstein told me that if you take a cold shower and you get ice cold all over your body, I'm talking like every crevice. It's a podcast. Crevice isn't a bad word, but you get it all over. It jolts your energy. It feels like your skin's tighter. You get more alert, and it kind of is a post-shower high that kind of keeps with you for some time being, and it kind of keeps you more sharp. And I thought that was kind of a weird thing. And then I started doing it, and then I found that he was right. So if you've never done this before, you should try this. And it takes about a week to adjust because there's nothing harder than it's like ice cold water for 45 seconds. You know how it goes when you're a guy and you're in cold water, the whole thing, the whole experience happens. But when you get out and you finally dry off and put your clothes on, it's a pretty invigorating feeling. And I've come to crave and look forward to that feeling. So, okay. We thought we were going to be quick today, and we're 3 minutes into the show, and I'm talking about turtling and not quarterbacks. So let's get into it. Let's try to stay out of the hot water here. So what we're doing here, guys, is we are going to be discussing 5 quarterbacks each that we are most intrigued to watch this year. It doesn't mean 5 best. It doesn't mean 5 most likely to be drafted in the first round. It means 5 most intriguing quarterbacks that you just are drawn to watching this year. Before we get into it, like always, I want to remind everybody to rate and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen. It helps us out. And if you could leave a nice review, that'd be great. And if you leave a mean review, just evaluate why you would do that. It doesn't make sense to me, but I hate it. I don't know what goes through people's minds when they do that. And then, of course, if you want to watch our beautiful faces on YouTube, the link is in the show's description, and the cool graphics that our producer Cam Molina does are always awesome, and it works out great. Okay, let's talk about football. We'll start with you, Max. Who is one of your 5?
Okay, I feel like this is. I'd be surprised. I'm going to say Jalen Milroe from Alabama. Is he on your list or no?
I have unnamed Alabama quarterback on my list. I remain unconvinced that Jalen Milroe will win the job, but we can talk about. Let's
have that conversation.
I have unnamed starter at Alabama on my list too. But if Jalen Milroe wins the job, whoever it is, Ubben over here is pissing off half of the podcast feed talking about Alabama going 9-3. It's like, is there a possibility? Ralph Russo, our buddy at the AP, texted me, said, "Hey, I'm picking Alabama to win a national title." I don't know how a human being could do that this year, but if Jalen Milroe is awesome, then maybe it's possible. Max, why'd you put him there?
You're saying Jake Coker ain't walking through that door? I went with Jalen Milroe. I think, it's funny. I was in Nashville this weekend for the personnel symposium of like about 500 recruiting staffers from across the country. And I was having a conversation with a staffer about this. Their opinion, and they don't play Bama this year, but their opinion was Jalen Milroe is the guy of the three in the competition they would least like to play against. I think that the dynamic he brings in the run game is the thing that scares you. Like, you can definitely question where is he at as a passer. How many, what kind of strides has he made under new OC Tommy Rees? But that's an ability he's got. He flashed it a little bit in his chances last year. If you take out the sacks, he averaged 10 yards per carry last year. I think that adds a ton of value on third downs and can get Alabama out of trouble as they kind of figure things out offensively with a new system and all that. I don't think Tyler Buchner transfers there unless he's like given pretty good assurance that he could be the guy. Like, I think he would have gone to Stanford or somewhere else where he would definitely be the starter. So it's a little, I always thought that was a little alarming, that move that he made and what that suggested about the state of the, position battle coming out of spring ball here. And look, Jalen Milroe, like, if he doesn't take care of the football, he's going to get benched. There's no doubt. Like, PFF has this stat, turnover worthy plays. And last 2 years, Bryce Young, his turnover worthy plays has only been 2% of plays in each of the last two seasons. It was 2% for Mac Jones as well. In a small sample last year for Jalen Milroe, it was 10%. So if he does that, if he makes mistakes or almost makes a ton of mistakes, like, then somebody else is going to get a chance. But I think Milroe is the one on this list of the guys that, like, is the true, like, college football playoff, like, wild card guy. The one that you kind of question the most. And, like, when you look at their schedule, is he still going to be the guy? Will he win the job, first of all? And then will he still be the guy going into October when they, when it's time to go play Tennessee and LSU? Like, the way that battle plays out is going to be absolutely fascinating.
I do think Milroe, not unlike Corn, does have the juice more than any of the other guys that we're talking about on this list. I think that when you look at what Tommy Rees wants to do, I'm very curious if we're going to see a lot more, called runs for quarterbacks. And certainly if you do that, Buchner is pretty mobile. Milroe, that top end speed, he can give. So I'll put it this way: if Alabama does exceed already relatively high expectations, if they do win a national title, if they're playing for a national title, I think he's the guy that does give you that best chance, because I think he could be the best odds to turn into a impact player. As it stands right now, I don't think any of these three guys will be true impact players, but I think they can definitely impact Alabama's final win-loss record. And I think if you're going to use quarterback run game a little bit more, like we've seen Tommy Rees do, I think Milroe makes a lot of sense. But I think at the end of the day, you might see multiple quarterbacks at Bama if we're this late in the season and you don't already know. When's the last time? Was it Coker and Sims? Was that the last time we saw that? And if I'm not mistaken, they won the championship last year.
It does remind you of 2016 a little bit, right? I mean, going into that season opener against USC, is it Blake Barnett? Is it Cooper Bateman? And then Jalen Hurts in the second half of that game really takes the job. And he was a true freshman at the time. Milroe's got a little bit more experience in that. But it reminds me of that one a little bit, not to say that's how it's going to play out.
The thing that I think is interesting about him is that I watched him last year and I didn't think that guy stinks. I thought he's got a lot of potential to build off of if he takes a huge step in the offseason. So, like, a lot of people think that he stinks. Now, the one thing that Dave said in a previous show, I think, was that in college football in 2023, you have to have a team and an offense that can score 40 points against an elite defense to win a national championship. And we're not talking about a team that views success in any other realm besides winning games in that realm. So if he is really good or pretty good and they win 10 games because he's pretty good, that's still not Alabama standard. Like, do they have a player on this team at the quarterback position that can put them in a legitimate position to win a national championship this year? I think that person, based on what we've seen with our eyes, is Milroe. But I put unnamed Alabama starter because I have eagle eyes on whatever happens with that team and at that position. So I think it's definitely somebody that should be on your list, and all three of us have this team on our list in one way or the other for a reason. So it's a good pick, Max. All right, Dave, who's your first person out of the chute here?
My number one would be Mr. Bazooka Joe Milton. Listen, there's always the sort of idea that, well, a team's only as good as their quarterback or can only go as far as their quarterback. And that's more true than not. But it might not be more true with any team in the country this year than Tennessee. And there might not be a more intriguing guy to fit that bill than Joe Milton. He might be the most tantalizing, the most toolsy quarterback that we've seen in college football, because you see little flashes of it. You see, oh my gosh, who is this guy? I mean, I think the comparisons to Anthony Richardson are very, very fair with him in that there's a lot of flaws, but there's also, he can do a lot of things that not a lot of people can do. You know, you're talking about, first of all, just a tank of a human being. He's ridiculously large. If you guys have not seen him in person, I mean, every bit of 6'4", 6'5", 240, 250. I mean, he is gigantic. The arm strength is kind of whatever. Like, I don't think that matters that much. Like, I don't really care that you can throw a ball 80 yards. I think the velocity that he has allows him to make some throws. If you saw that throw he made in the back of the end zone of Brew McCoy in the Orange Bowl, I was sitting in the end zone in that game in the press box, and the window that he put that through with the amount of velocity he had on it, I think velocity matters a lot more than how far you can throw it. And the dude can fire it in there, and I think that can matter. But ultimately, when you're talking about Joe Milton, for me, the big question for him is, can you put that all together? He can win you some games, no question. But can he also be the guy that doesn't lose you games? Because I think two of the lasting images of Joe Milton are him sailing balls to wide open receivers downfield against Pitt in 2021 that were a big factor in why he lost that job to Hendon Hooker, and him sort of drifting out of bounds in the final seconds against Ole Miss in the crazy game instead of throwing it up in the end zone and sort of made people pull their hair out in that sort of game. So, you know, he ended the season last year really, really well. I think the potential is there. I talked to Joey Halsley about him, you know, in Miami for quite a while, and they think he's grown a lot and understands a little bit more how to harness a lot of that arm strength. But can you do it every single week? If you can, Tennessee might be back in the playoff hunt. If you can't, they're probably dropping to 7 and 8 wins. He has maybe as acute a impact on his team's win-loss record this year as maybe anybody in the country, as well as just a fun guy to watch. So Joe Milton is my number one.
Is that a high patience situation too, David? You think? I mean, I'm not going to make assumptions about where Nico's at in his development, but is that one where, like, if it's a little bumpy, they're going to ride with him?
I would say probably. I think it's going to have to get real bumpy. I think like multiple back-to-back games with like 3 picks and you lose them both against teams you probably shouldn't lose to before you even sort of broach the conversation. So, you know, define that leash however you'd like. I think you hear them talk a big game with like, oh, Nico's doing great, he's coming along. But I think that conversation, without them saying it, probably happens in the expectation that like, we don't need him to be ready this year. We need him to be like not looking like he's totally lost. He's probably there. But can he be the guy? You know, this team, you forget this coaching staff is the same coaching staff that brought him in fresh post-spring 2021 and gave him the job ahead of Hendon Hooker. And they were big believers in him then. That belief, especially when he sticks around for 2 years, waits his turn again, doesn't transfer a second time, that belief has only intensified. And this fall, we'll see if it's rewarded.
I didn't put him on my list because I knew that you were going to take 5 minutes of this podcast to put him on here. Like, he definitely would be on my list. But the thing I like about him the most, too, is just like in this world where measurables are king, it's like, could he be the top 3 pick?
That's absolutely on. That's
like
absolutely
it's on the table.
Mm.
So, and I want to remind people, if you are listening to this list, it's not that we are not excited to watch Caleb Williams or Drake May play football this year. It's that we already know that they're awesome, and that's why it's not as intriguing as some of the guys on this list. So, I just wanted to reiterate that it's not best or most likely to go number 1 in the draft. It's most intriguing players for multiple reasons. Like, I have guys who probably aren't top 30 quarterbacks on my list. So, we'll see how it goes. And my number 1, you guys want to guess?
I'm gonna guess his name starts with a Q, and he was probably named after a famed 1990s television show starring Jane Seymour.
I think it's Malik Murphy. Who's it going to
be? Well, actually, if he was playing, he would be on my list. I don't know. I don't know if I need like a 3-minute preamble to discuss why I think Quinn Ewers is my number one guy. My question is, how did he get to a point where people thought he wasn't good last year? And doesn't he seem to have the tools that you necessary to take a huge step and become one of the top 5 players at his position this year? I think Texas is an ultra intriguing program in general. I've discussed on the show that I think that they're going to make the playoff this year. And part of the reason why is because Quinn is going to take a huge jump. I just really want to see it happen, or I want to see him. And if he stinks or takes a step back or isn't what he was supposed to be, then that's a very intriguing storyline as well. I don't know how you could be interested in the sport this year and not be, on the edge of your seat waiting to watch him and Texas play this year.
I think a lot of it's just context. Like, I think too many times there's the conversation around guys can be shaped by people that don't pay attention to a lot of factors. I think people forget he reclassified, he moved up. So you skip your senior year of high school. You don't play at Ohio State. And then when you do play, you're basically a true freshman, redshirt freshman in eligibility, but you're basically a true freshman and you're hurt. Well, like, that's asking a lot. And they were still asking him to be the guy. And he was still really good at times, average a lot of the time, but certainly showed you enough that when you're adding all those things up, a lot of expectation. Texas is kind of a tough place to play football, quite frankly, the expectations that are on there. A true freshman battling injury, if you can stay healthy, you have another year of an offseason in the system where you're that guy, and then you've obviously got 2 really good quarterbacks behind you that are pushing you, that are pretty smart guys as well. The pieces are there for the breakthrough, Aria. As much as I give you a hard time about Texas, it's on paper. I see it.
Well, and specifically on the pieces, everyone I've talked to around that program, that, no disrespect to Ohio State or anybody else, but I think there's a real belief there that Texas has one of the most talented receiver rooms in the country. The addition of A.D. Mitchell from Georgia has been massive. They think that's going to really help Xavier Worthy too in terms of the matchup he gets. JT Sanders, one of the best tight ends in the country. A lot of optimism about what they can get out of Jordan Whittington, out of Isaiah Nair, and the freshman group led by Ryan Niblett. Big expectations for them. So I think that supporting cast for Quinn Ewers or whoever is starting for Texas, I would assume Quinn Ewers, over the course of the full season. I think that is going to make whoever it is look pretty good.
I think people forgot about Isaiah Nair, by the way. He was one of the top 3 receivers in the portal market last year, and then tore up his knee in the preseason.
Yeah, fall camp injury. Yeah, he's back, and it's a pretty talented room. Yeah.
Also, they have a really good offensive line this year, so I think that they are going to be scoring in the 40s every week, and if they are, then their quarterback who shaved his mullet will be a big part of that. So I think shaving the mullet is serious business, and
it's in the Big 12 in 2008, Ari. I don't know about in the 40s every week.
Yeah, I don't know. The best teams in the country offensively average in the upper 30s usually, right? I don't know.
Well,
40s,
no, it's low.
Yeah,
low
40s.
40s.
Top of the list is 40s.
Yeah, I didn't think it was crazy to think that. I think that when you add up all the pieces there and the teams that they're playing, that they should score a lot of points this year. Okay, Max, your number. Did anybody else have him on their list, by the way?
No.
I
figured
I had a premonition that you would.
Us, yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. We'll see that we're gonna cover everything because we all know each other very well. Okay, Max, who's another one on your list?
I'm gonna go Tanner Mordecai from Wisconsin. I think the fit's really good here. I'm just really interested to see is he a guy that can really kind of put it all together in his 1 year in Madison. I mean, he can really sling it. If you take the last 2 seasons combined, he ranks number 8 nationally in passing yards and number 4 in passing touchdowns. Kind of that prime example of nowadays that player that is going to go take year 6 at a school instead of going pro because he's got the extra year. I think that Phil Longo offense, it's a very simplified offense. I don't think it's going to be hard for Tanner Mordecai to operate that at a high level in one off season with Phil Longo. That's an offense. If you look at the North Carolina days for Longo, they were top 20 offense every year in terms of total offense. But you also saw in 2020 when they had Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, they could play to their strengths in the run game. And I think what you got in Braylon Allen and Ches Malusi makes the job a little bit easier. for Tanner Mordecai. So I think, ultimately, is the receiving core good enough? I think is the interesting question. They brought in a bunch of transfers who I think really upgrade that group. But I think Tanner Mordecai has a chance to be as productive as anybody in the country if he can stay healthy and that thing can really click.
And one of the more intriguing programs in the country too. So you add in a quarterback who, transfers in, who comes from a pass-first offense. They've got a new offensive coordinator there, and Luke Fickell's taking over a program that wants to take a jump from being a perennial top or 10-win team to a team that can win a playoff game. Year one, that's the face of the team. I just think that the storyline in general is also intriguing.
I think it'll be hard to be the face of change if you're Tanner Mordecai. I don't envy him there. Now, I was born in the great state of Minnesota and then moved to the South when I was like 4. And I've been there for most of the rest of my life with a detour in Texas. So I can't speak to the football culture in Wisconsin quite as much as maybe you could, Ari. You spent a little bit more time in the Midwest up north. But I'm curious if things don't go sort of smoothly in year one. How many times is he going to be out and somebody grabs him by the lapel and says, hey, tell coach to run the dang ball? Because I feel like that would have happened in the South in a lot of places if you had built so much of your identity around running the bang ball like you've seen Wisconsin do for a long time and do things. They can talk about balance. They can talk about all the things they want. This is an offense that I think is going to be built around throwing to open up the run. And that is a very, very different world that you're living in. And I think Tanner Mordecai is going to be the face of that change. And I think he was on my list. I think I had him number 4. And it's very interesting to me, what that experience will be like, because if it doesn't go well, I think he will catch a lot of the heat there. And that's a lot of pressure. It's a very interesting spot for him. A guy that had so much success at SMU, obviously the last couple of years, and initially started at Oklahoma, a guy who's seen big time football, but that's going to be an interesting spot. I'm fascinated to see how that handles, big picture along with just how he plays.
Is there a bigger identity change between playing at SMU and then going to old Wisconsin? Like if you were like to make that transfer before they made that change there, I don't know if I think that the throw first mentality, I mean, if that's what's going to be the Phil Longo route there, I think that they have a good offensive line and a great running back, and I'm assuming they're still going to run the ball a ton. So I think that there's a way to still rely on the run while also being a proficiently good passing team. And I'm very curious. And the intrigue of this whole thing is, how is Wisconsin going to do it? So I think both make at points there. And I'm also excited. He didn't make my list because I have a few dumpster fires on mine, or one. Then I'm just intrigued because I can't wait to see it, which we'll get to. But certainly also, guys, I don't know if it's just because we're in the middle of August, but this is a pretty hard list to dwindle down to 5. I don't know if you guys had a hard time with this. There's a lot of really intriguing quarterbacks out there this year. So if you don't make the list, it's not because we didn't try.
At the end of the podcast, let's just say a series of names that we didn't, just names we didn't think of.
Remember some guides around, right? Just yell names. And everybody, oh yeah. We'll play
Dave,
on
who's
that.
your second?
We'll save space. Let's do it, man. Let's have the Shedeur Sanders conversation right now. I just got back from Boulder. Listen,
Woo!
We have no idea how good he is. I believe Travis Hunter is special. I think he is going to be unbelievable. Shedeur, we have no idea. The arm talent, I think, is rather obvious with him. I think he's going to have a bunch of really good receivers. It's a good system. They're basically running the Baylor offense out there with Sean Lewis. Up-tempo, power spread, the simplest way to break that down. But can the offensive line hold up? I think it's the biggest question. You're rebuilding it in one offseason. We'll see how they end up, starting. I think 3 or 4 of the starters will be guys that were not there in the spring. And the fact there's literally nobody behind him. If he goes down, Colorado is in trouble. I think Deion said this weekend that he has not missed a game since he was 7 years old. I need to fact check that. But that's an interesting stat if it's true.
That's why they didn't take a QB2 in the portal?
Yeah, I think so. But it's an interesting spot to be because, again, Shedeur played private school in Texas. All the private schools in Texas play each other. They do not play the big time program. So he's a really good player. High 3-star, low 4-star-ish. Was headed to Florida Atlantic to play for Lane Kiffin. And then his dad got the job at Jackson State. And then he goes to Jackson State playing in the SWAC, where their team was a lot better than everybody else. And so, he's setting up picnics in the pocket, guys going to receivers that are open by 2 and 3 steps. we just don't know. I believe in his arm talent, but can you make decisions, when you're running around? Uncle Neely, the YouTube chronicler of the program, threw out a stat that he believes that so far in their camp, this was about 3 or 4 days ago, he had thrown 89 passes in team drills, 22 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Now, that might be a commentary on the state of Colorado's secondary. We will see. Deion was very critical of them when I was out there. But, again, the arm talent is there. But how this all works, the chemistry, all of that stuff, what is the ceiling for him is an interesting question, because I don't really know. Like, if you told me he played his way into the first round conversation, like by November, I guess that's possible. And if people are talking about him as a bum in November, maybe that's possible too. I think his range of outcomes is so wide that I really don't know what to expect, and it's going to be very, very interesting. I'll be doing a bunch of Colorado stuff this fall, so keep an eye out for that.
All right, I have a little game for you here, David.
Okay.
Here's what I'm going to offer you. If Shedeur Sanders, let's say Shedeur Sanders finishes the season with 3,200 passing yards on 64% passing, 28 total touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He plays all 13 games. Like, would you take that right now if you're Colorado?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's all. I think those are all reasonable numbers. I mean, this offense, again, like,
do you want to know where really I came up with those?
Please tell me.
That's Cameron Ward last year at Washington State.
All right.
I looked that up because he made the jump from FCS as well,
Mm-hmm. I think it's possible. I think that was a bit of a more stable situation, probably.
Yeah. Team with a winning record.
The conversation around him is interesting because I don't know how good he is, but the idea that he's like a Nepo baby is really silly. Like, and I think Deion, he bristled at that. Somebody asked a question about the backup quarterback, and Deion was like, well, now you can't say it like that. Go watch the clip if you haven't seen it. It's very funny. Like, most Deion press conferences are theater in their own way. So, could Deion have tried to get a better quarterback out of the portal? I don't know. I certainly know he didn't try. We've never seen a coach introduce a starting quarterback at his introductory press conference. That's new. So it may not matter. I think there's a trust there. I think that does matter. Like, his only coach Shedeur's ever had is Deion. So it's just a fascinating situation that a lot of people are going to be watching.
I had him on my list too. I almost didn't because they're going to stink, and I couldn't leave him off. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like everything you said. What's it going to look like, and how's it going to go? I mean, and how good is he? Are three questions that, in the most intriguing coaching change ever, maybe. And him being Deion's son, like, you can't be. He's on your list too, Max, I assume, or is he not?
Dave already said he was going to be on the list, so I thought I'd throw in some extra here. He should.
Okay,
I mean, he's
good.
No doubt a top 5 intriguing. Like, what?
Yeah, you're a good podcaster because there's more. We're going to spread the wealth. Okay, I'm going to have one that I think maybe might be only on mine.
Okay.
Graham Mertz from Florida.
Oh my
was
goodness.
just named the starter this year. And listen, I watched Graham Mertz play at Wisconsin quite a bit. Don't ask me why. I did. And there was a lot of painful
Did you have
moments.
a vested interest in Graham Mertz games?
No, I just, well, sometimes, I don't know. I watched it because, when he committed there, he was, no, he's helped me, I think.
Okay.
I watched it. I watched it quite a bit, but I felt there were times where I legitimately felt bad for him watching him play. And I don't know if it's because he just didn't develop the way that they thought he would, or if it was a system mismatch or whatever. But you got to remember that when Graham Mertz committed to Wisconsin, he was supposed to be the new frontier of Wisconsin football into, better seasons than 10-2. He was supposed to be the guy that helped them throw it. And not only did he not help them throw it, it's like they were just like wishing he was Jim Sorgi the whole time, and it didn't work out. Now, on the flip side, he's transferring to Florida, a place that is in a very interesting position with a second-year head coach in Billy Napier, where people are wondering, does he have to have a good season this year in order to keep his job? I don't know if that's a fair discussion, but that is a discussion. And he is hitching his wagon to a player who was once considered ultra talented, was a complete disaster at Wisconsin, and now is like starting in the SEC at a program that expects to win national championships. I don't know if I'm saying something that doesn't make sense here, but like, that to me is an intriguing situation. Is it not?
Graham Mertz is number 3 on my list.
So,
Okay. Oh, you were shaking your head at me like I was full of shit. I was like, God, what did I? Okay, yeah.
No. You have to.
is this a buy low situation for you, Ari? Or is it just
if he goes out with Florida in week 1 and throws 4 picks and is awful, that is intriguing to me. The list is intriguing quarterbacks. I think that the storyline there is they cannot leave off this list storyline.
My first memory of Graham Mertz, of course, 20 of 21, 5 touchdowns in his first start ever against Illinois in 2020.
Yeah,
and
I remember.
You, I was kind of like, oh, Wisconsin. This is like is a real situation here. Since then, he has thrown. Let's see here. He has more than 2 touchdowns in 1, 2, 3 games since then. One of which was against Northwestern last year, which barely
counts. Terrifying.
And 1 4-interception game against Notre Dame. Part of me wonders maybe if he sort of screwed himself or hurt the narrative around himself when you come out of the gate like that hot that quickly, and the expectation. I mean, it's like the Mel Tucker disease at Michigan State, where like you have this explosive debut, and then it sort of shifts people's expectations of you in a way that's kind of unfair to yourself. Maybe that's happened with him, because like the conversation around Graham Mertz most of the offseason is like making fun of Florida, of like, oh, you can't do any better than getting Graham Mertz, which may or may not be true. I think ultimately Billy Napier has done a heck of a job, developing and finding quarterbacks. And, Anthony Richardson was kind of a weird situation there. But, like, do you believe that Graham Mertz is more or close to the same talent level as, like, Levi Lewis, excuse me. Leo Lewis is a boxer, is he not?
I don't know. Possibly.
No, Leo Lewis is a former linebacker from Mississippi State who was the subject of a major NCAA violation.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I think that's a fair point.
Levi Lewis.
I think that's a fair point. The thing with, I was looking up some Graham Mertz stats today, just because that's what anyone would do in the middle of August as we get ready for the season. The completion percentage has gone down every season. It was 57% last year. He has started 32 games in college and has 0 300-yard passing games. And the total TDs to total turnovers is 46-34 so far.
He's winning.
Look, but it's kind of a funny question though. Like, if you go to look at the QBs in this portal cycle, like, who is the guy? I'm not going to say Graham Mertz is the guy, but like, who's the guy that could have like the Penix kind of year, like the comeback year, and you're like, holy crap, he's amazing. Like, is it Devin Leary? Is it DJ? Is it Brendon Armstrong? Like, I don't know. There's some interesting candidates on that list.
Yeah. My whole thing is, if I were the head coach of Florida, like, wouldn't you want to go and I'm saying Malik Murphy would have wanted to leave Texas, but like, why is Malik Murphy not starting at a place like Florida this year?
It's a great question.
Graham Mertz is like question. That to me is like, that's what I think about. I'm like, we made a Malik Murphy joke, but I was at the Elite 11 regional in
Are you saying
Austin.
Why didn't Florida's collective offer an extreme amount of money to a quarterback this offseason?
I'm not even saying a quarter. I'm not even saying just Florida. I'm just saying, like, I walked by this guy. Yeah, I don't know what could have gone wrong there, Max, by the way. I walked by him in the bleachers, and because I wrote about him 2 years ago when he went to Texas, and then I saw him for the first time. The man has grown. He is humongous. I think that he probably is Joe Milton-esque in person. Like, I've never seen Joe Milton in the last years in person. And it's like, that guy is like, in a world where everybody's transferring, like, being the starting quarterback at Florida is a great place to be. It's like, would you rather back up Quinn Ewers and get caught in the middle of a ice cream sandwich with, Arch on the other side of you? Or would you rather be the starting quarterback at Florida?
Sorry. Just for the record, that's reverse ice cream sandwich.
Are you saying ice cream's worse than cookies? Like, what does that mean?
I don't even know why I said that. He's the ice cream in the middle of the sandwich.
All right, have you seen an ice cream sandwich before?
Yeah.
There's no bad part of an ice cream sandwich. What are we saying here?
Yeah, that was bad. I'm just going to put my hands up and say, sorry, guys. I didn't mean to ruin the show and possibly the evening. Just being caught in the middle of a sandwich is like what people say. You don't want to be in the middle of a sandwich, right? Should I say, like, I don't want to be in the middle of a shit sandwich? Like, I don't know. Like, what is it getting worse?
It's not going great for you, right?
Yeah. I just wouldn't want to
in a better direction. We can keep going.
I wouldn't want to be in between those two when I could be a starter at an SEC program.
Yeah,
so when I look at Graham Mertz being the starting quarterback with all those stats you guys just read off, and the fact that it's just looked blatantly uncomfortable at times, like from the eye test, it's like that is the person that Billy Napier, who is in a critical spot in his coaching tenure right now. Now, the recruiting class for this year is looking great. I think he just got a borderline top 100 player to commit as we're recording this. It seems like a huge gamble on a guy that could get fired at the end of the year. That's incredibly intriguing theater.
To extend the metaphor, would you say Quinn Ewers, is he the rock or is he the hard place that Malik Murphy's in between here?
When you are between a rock and a hard place, does that mean like you're pinned against the wall?
I don't know.
Sure. We're stretching it out. At the end of the day, you're between a mullet and a Manning. At the end of
a mullet and a Manning is a good way to put it. Yeah.
Manning.
I just wouldn't want to be between those two and any version of it.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, you don't want to be the guy keeping Arch Manning off the field, right? That's for a certain class of college football fan, like that's an annoying place to be. Where even if he's great, there's going to be a sect of people grumbling, like literally every time you throw an incompletion, like you're keeping a future Hall of Famer off the field. Like, what are you doing? We got this kid; he's going to be the next Peyton Manning. It's like maybe, but like. That just would be an annoying place if I'm Malik.
But we have to also reserve the thought or the possibility that Graham Mertz turns out to be awesome, which would also be incredible.
And can they run the ball with Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson and kind of let him be a play action kind of guy and just not put it all on his plate,
I'm not
Billy
buying
Napier
it,
looks
but
like a wizard.
I'm not buying it, but it's not impossible.
Okay, I think we've got one time through the merry-go-round here. Left to go here. Max, who is your final? Do you have two guys left?
Got two left.
Okay, why don't you just go with your more intriguing one here?
Okay, I'm going to say, I'm guessing this guy's maybe not on your guys' list. I'm going to go Tyler Shough from Texas Tech. I think that's a pretty interesting quarterback situation there. He's a guy that if you don't know the timeline on Tyler Shough, 2018, 2019 at Oregon, he backs up Justin Herbert. 2020, he's the starter during the COVID year, the shortened year. He gets some, that Oregon gets into the Pac-12 title game that year. But by the end of the season, the staff is kind of putting Anthony Brown in games too. So he leaves at the end of that season and goes to Texas Tech. Looks like he's ready for a big year in 2021. Breaks his collarbone in the Big 12 opener against Texas. 2022, he comes back, shoulder injury in the season opener, misses 6 games, comes back, leads them Texas Tech to 4 wins in a row to finish. I thought he played really well against Oklahoma and Ole Miss to finish out. I think, obviously people point to, how talented Baron Morton is in that competition, but this staff really believes in Tyler Shough. I think they really feel like he is the guy that can execute Zach Kittley's offense at a super high level now that he's been in it for a full year. I love the pieces around him with Taj Brooks, Miles Price, Duran Bradley. I think the O-line should be solid. And, Tyler Shough, because of the injury, kind of flies, all the injuries, he kind of flies under the national radar a little bit, but maybe this guy could be like this year's Max Duggan, possibly. And honestly, I was surprised that AP voters left Texas Tech out of the preseason top 25. I think they're pretty dangerous this year.
Yeah, we got to get him one of those suits like the little kid in Little Giants wore, like when he's walking around campus or at practice, or maybe even games if it's legal. But Max, for our listeners who pay attention to or who listen to our Big 12 preview, I just referred to him as future Big 12 champion Tyler Shough. So I don't know if Ari would disagree with that, but that's where I'm at. I'm all in on him.
Everyone's high on the Red Raiders, and I'm excited to watch that Oregon game in week 2.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, like, TCU kind of came out of nowhere, and everybody seems to be on the Tech bandwagon. It's like, can you do it when people are looking out for you to do it? So we have a guest appearance here from my little daughter. Sorry about that. So what's the next guy on your list, Dave?
This man left me absolutely floored last season. And then I could not really understand how this happens. Brendon Armstrong in 2021 threw for 4,449 yards, 31 touchdowns, 10 picks, completed 65% of his passes, 8.9 yards an attempt, also ran for 9 scores. He and Robert and I were magic. Last year, 2,210 yards, 7 touchdowns, 12 picks, completes 54% of his passes, 6.5 yards per attempt. It was hard to watch under Tony Elliott in year one. I don't know what the deal is with the Dabo coaching tree between Jeff Scott being one of the few people who can't win at USF and Tony Elliott getting off to an absolutely nightmare start at Virginia. Brandon Streeter gets sort of sent packing after, I guess it was 1 or 2 years as the OC there. I don't know what's going on with the coaching tree from Dabo, but all I know is we get the reuniting of Robert Anae and Brendon Armstrong at NC State now. I'm very fascinated to see how this plays out. Can you go back to Brendon Armstrong was not that far from the Heisman conversation. He came on, especially late in the season in 2021. He was like, one big showcase game away from really having, a interesting situation. It's also interesting if Bronco Mendenhall doesn't retire, what happens? How much of what he did was that partnership with Robert and I'm very fascinated to see how that plays out under Dave Doeren. And also, quick stat for you guys. I was looking at NC State. Are you aware that 8 of the last 9 seasons at NC State, Dave Doeren has won between 7 and 9 games?
Real steady.
It's an interesting
Good place to be.
Can you break that streak in a good way? If this thing comes together, it's not impossible.
Did you have him on your list, Max?
I did not. It's a good inclusion, though. I mean, if we're talking about guys that are just like kind of have wild card written all over them, I think Armstrong's high on that list for sure.
Yeah. Okay, guys. I don't know how we got to minute 41 minutes and 22 seconds before anybody said the name Drew Allar. How on earth?
I took him. He was on my list. I took him off in respect to you.
No, this is me and Dave clearing the paint. Let's go, Ari. Take it to the hole here.
Ari, I apologize for not letting you cook on your Texas take on one of our first podcasts. So yes, this is me. Right now we are the Dwayne Wade, LeBron James photo. I'm throwing it up to you. So have at it.
Yeah, Ari. Ari. That spending a year behind NFL draft pick Sean Clifford, I think is going to be very beneficial for him.
Mm-hmm.
See Clifford throwing some dimes in that Packers preseason game over the weekend too.
I was shook.
By the way, you need to send an apology to Sam Kahn, Dave, because when you didn't let me cook on my Texas take, I downloaded all that frustration out onto him on a show that ran 3 days later, and I don't know if he's recovered from that yet. Listen, Penn State might be a top 5 team in the country this year, playing in what I believe will probably be the toughest division in college football this year. And I just need to know, is he going to be the first top 3 round or top 2 round quarterback that Penn State has had during a year where they have a ton of production back? And will he be good enough to get them a win over Michigan or Ohio State and put them in a position to potentially not only win the Big Ten, but make the college football playoff this year? It is a very hard position to be in when you finally have the best team that you've had under James Franklin to come in during the same year where Michigan's also really good and maybe the best version of itself that they've had under Jim Harbaugh, and Ohio State is, Ohio State. So Penn State's had some really good quarterbacks. I mean, Trace McSorley was a pleasure to watch. I mean, I remember freshman year Christian Hackenberg was, John Elway in his prime.
Easy.
I remember,
Easy.
but what if they got their guy? And this guy turns out to be a legitimate first-round pick who is there for 2 more years, and this is his coming out party. They make the playoff this year. That is a Heisman Trophy campaign story right there. I don't know if, he has to go out and play and do it. I know he was a 5-star, and everybody thinks I just like him because he's a 5-star. But I fell in love with his actual physical tools, the Elite 11, before, he ever got to Penn State. So, Penn State, to me, is one of the more intriguing teams to watch this year. And they're going to be playing in a ton of big games. And will their quarterback rise to the occasion, I think, is just clearly one of the 5 most interesting quarterback scenarios that we have this year. And you guys, thanks for clearing the paint for me. I think you'll
listen. I think the simplest way, if you want to climb the ladder from any rung to another rung, Kansas going from half a win to 6 wins. Well, how'd they do it? Impact player at quarterback. Jalen Daniels kind of changes everything right for you. For all Lance Leipold's been doing, ultimately you got to have a playmaker back there. If you're going to go from where Penn State is going to go, from very good team to elite of the class of the Big Ten, get an impact player at quarterback. Sean Clifford, are we going to call him above average? Is that what we're going to say? Slightly
average,
above replacement level?
Yeah.
Well,
Rose Bowl
regardless,
champion.
if all of a sudden you have an impact player at quarterback, I like your odds to climb that ladder if you're Penn State, and that's the quickest way to do it.
Marrying it with all they have on their roster too. Like not only that, but also
Of course.
with what they have on defense and some of the pieces that they have, on offense. I love Penn State's potential this year. I don't know if I think they're going to win the Big Ten, but they could be a top 6 team in the country and the 3rd best team in their own division, and that just stinks.
This is a good year for the 12-year playoff for them because I'd like them to sneak into the Final Four.
Yeah, why would we want any intrigue about whether they could do it or not? We should just let everybody in. You're right. I agree. We should strip out any intrigue.
Buy the hotel, book the hotels right now. I mean, there's no point.
Yeah. There's no point in playing the season. I can't wait for that, Dave. Thank you for bringing that up.
By the way, all right, it is kind of funny thing. So a year ago, I remember you having this debate with Ralph. It's kind of funny how we got the extreme outcome of they go with Clifford, they win 11 games. They win the Rose Bowl, but they lose to Ohio State and Michigan. So was that a wasted season?
Yeah. I think that is a very intriguing thought. And I don't think that Penn State fans think it's like winning the Rose Bowl is a wasted season. But what if you asked a Penn State fan and said, you lost 1 or 2 more games last year. We're taking the Rose Bowl away from you, but you're coming into a season this year where Drew Allar's actually awesome and you know it already. Would you do it? I would venture to say, with all the hype that this team has right now, it'd be an interesting poll. I don't think that I would do it if I were a Penn State fan. Who's like holding the Rose Bowl trophy under like a blanket, at night and just cuddling it? Like it's not what it used to be. It's a good season. Congratulations. You lost the only 2 games against teams that you played that are better or in a position to make the playoff. And then you won the consolation prize by playing Utah. So I don't know. I think
are we at the guy? Are we at the guy naming stage of this podcast now?
Cam said that
almost.
Rose Bowl is the ice cream sandwich of college football. Penn State was in the middle of the ice cream sandwich between Michigan and Ohio State last year, and I don't know. I'm not saying that the Rose Bowl is a joke. I'm not. If you were a Penn State fan, if you're a college football fan, wouldn't you rather go into a season where you are like this good with a legitimate quarterback that's gone through the ringer a little bit and, grown and thrown his picks and learned from his mistakes and is coming in like a prime candidate? Or do you want him to go through growing pains when you actually have a team that's good enough to make the playoff because of the Rose Bowl?
I will say, Ari, I'm going to expose that I am a 30-something from the South, but I'm going to whisper this. I don't really get the Rose Bowl hype. Like, it's cool, but
well,
people act like the Rose Bowl changing. Like, I remember people were acting like it was like heresy when TCU got to play in the Rose Bowl, and I was like, people got to chill out. Like, come on now. I remember all of the what was it? Was that the year that the Little Sisters of the Poor became part of the nomenclature, if I'm not mistaken?
Do you hear, Max, that noise in the background? Do you hear this noise? It's people typing up 1-star reviews for our podcast right now. That's what that is. The SEC obsessed until Saturday feed strikes again by saying the Rose Bowl. They don't understand the hype. Have you been to the game?
I'm just saying, chill out, people.
Have you been to the game?
I have not.
Answer the question.
I get sort of part of it, but the idea that the Rose Bowl changing and not just being Big Ten versus the Pac-12 and not being, exactly, it is listen, guys, things change. The game's still gonna get played. You'll get to see your blessed sunset. It's fine.
So you've never covered a game at the Rose Bowl?
I have never covered. I've been to the Rose Bowl. I've never covered a game there.
You didn't get it.
It's the coolest game that I've ever covered. And I've covered national title games. Yeah. It's
not close.
It is. It should be the national championship game.
Have you ever covered a Tuesday night Maction game?
Yes. Not quite pretty sunsets, but I think that if we're going to get better reviews on this podcast, shitting on the Rose Bowl is not the way to go. I don't know if that's just me.
I'm just saying people need to chill out a little bit. Chill out a little bit about the Rose Bowl.
The game is incredible.
Actually, Tom Hanks sucks, like that.
Usually I'm the
one counter takes. Let me tell you how much I hate Paul Rudd. This guy is absolute ne'er-do-well.
But that said, in the new realm of college football, winning the Rose Bowl it's not like the BCS era anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps you much in establishing your program as being one of the best. I think that in your heart of hearts, if you're a Penn State fan, you probably would rather have a seasoned veteran, really good quarterback instead of the Rose Bowl championship going into this season. But I'll die on that hill. So, okay, Max, my computer has like battery left, so we're going to try for a Hanukkah miracle here and see if we can finish this thing without my computer dying. Who's your last one?
My last one, you asked me about watching MAC games. I'm going DeQuan Finn from Toledo.
Oh,
If
baby.
you know, you
Let's
know.
go.
This dude's a baller. I think if he'd like transferred to a Big Ten school this offseason, there'd be a big hype train around him. He earned the starting job at Toledo midway through 2021. He's put up 52 touchdowns in 19 games since then, led him to a MAC title last year on an injured ankle, MVP of their bowl game as well. He's a top 10 rusher in college football last year, makes a ton of plays outside the pocket. They've got their big Power 5 game this year is their season opener at Illinois. So I'm curious to see if he can kind of turn some heads in that one. And then, when you get to the end of October, dude's got a couple Tuesday games. He's got a Wednesday game. We got a Friday game. I'm excited to watch. He's a player.
I hope that Toledo doesn't rip my heart out of my chest again.
What are the odds we get
year?
a Toledo New Year's 6 G5 bid?
Yeah, who is is there someone
UTSA
is my
UTSA is my pick.
UTSA
Toledo
I would have in my top preseason top 25 as well.
Can I say this? The Fiesta Bowl kind of sucks. I'm kidding. All right, Dave, who's your last one? That's a good pick.
So you guys already stole mine, but I will throw out one that I was going to say for the guy remembering stage. Are you aware that we have a Brady Belichick situation in the G5 in the breakup of Grayson McCall and Jamie Chadwell? I'm very intrigued to see how this plays out. You have a modest hire at Coastal Carolina, and you have Jamie Chadwell taking his system to Liberty. I'm very intrigued to see how that situation plays out, and if one of those two guys, neither of those two guys, or both of those two guys, just sort of either flounder or flourish in their new circumstances.
Okay, I'm gonna just rattle off two quick ones, and then we'll get out of here. One line each. Sam Hartman's going to Notre Dame. What does that look like in year two of Marcus Freeman? That's just, I think, a no-brainer.
A real test of the plug-and-play nature of the portal in 2023.
There's a lot that we left off.
There's a lot of good
at Iowa. Cade McNamara
reading
at
off
Iowa.
The QB list here, and we'll
yeah.
Let's talk about some names
go down.
We got some points to up this year in Iowa City, and then of course the one that we didn't mention at all, and I think deserves to be mentioned at least, is Jordan Travis at Florida State. I think he went high in our Heisman draft, and Florida State could be a sneaky team in the ACC this year that could make the playoff again for the first time since the first year. So those are some names I wanted to throw out. Anyone that we missed out on your end here, Max, before we get out of here?
Yeah, lots of names. Jackson Dart was going to be the one. If I had a sixth one, it'd probably be Jackson Dart. I think he's going to win the job at Ole Miss. I think that bringing in Spencer Sanders has really pushed him to get a lot better from everyone I've talked to. So I'm excited to see kind of what that step looks like for him. Let's just rattle off some dudes here. We should say to the listener, we are excited to watch Michael Penix play this year. We are excited to watch Bo Nix play this year. We have heard of Riley Leonard.
I feel like it's going to be like a Terminator 2 situation where it's like, it's going to be great. Like, we're excited for Penix and Nix, but like, I don't have a lot of reason to believe that it's going to be much different than what we saw last year. Like, those guys are going to ball out. So
we are excited for Michael Pratt. I almost had Tyler Van Dyke on my list. Like, that's a pretty interesting, like, what's going
intriguing
on there
is a good word for him. Yeah. He had the Brendon Armstrong program, but he didn't get the off-season glow up.
What about Devin Leary? Remember how much hype was around him last year? New place, new start.
Yes. I took him in our Heisman draft. Listen, my Devin Leary take is he's going to be a lot better than Will Levis at Kentucky.
Which Will Levis?
All of the Will Levises. All the Will Levi. All of them. He'll be better than in both years.
Yeah.
Oh, and Ari, I know you're intrigued by the Oklahoma quarterback situation too.
Well, of course. I
wonder if you'd have them on there.
If it happens, if there's a rising from the depth chart, for sure. I took a flyer on Jackson Arnold. Of course, I don't know if he's going to play, but if he does, that'll be something interesting. Obviously, who wins the Ohio State battle's high on my radar. Frank Harris at UTSA is another one. I mean, we could go on and on and on. If we left your favorite quarterback off, really, really sorry. But I thought that was an entertaining show, guys.
Just trust us. We love them anyway.
I'm in California right now. I'm looking at the ocean. I think I'm gonna go get an ice cream sandwich. What do you guys think?
That's
I'll let you know if
code
the
for
ice cream sucks.
He's
this
just
time.
gonna watch Texas quarterback highlights on YouTube. That's what that really means.
He's gonna let the ice cream melt
Yeah.
and then eat 2 cookies. Is what he's gonna do.
Yes. Sorry for the terrible analogy. I hope you forgive me.
I'm
Hope
still
that was an entertaining
confused.
show.
That's all right.
Yeah. We'll unpack it on the next episode before my computer dies. Again, thanks guys for joining us. That was the latest edition of Until Saturday. Please, like we always say at the end and beginning of every show, subscribe and rate and review. Disregard Dave's Rose Bowl comment. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Dude needs to go
Chill
outside
out.
and
That's all
touch
I'm
some
asking.
grass and
Rose
see
Bowl
some
commentary
mountains.
does not reflect the views of Until Saturday.
Yes. So please leave a review. Don't make it a 1-star, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All that stuff. Excited to continue previewing this season that's coming up rapidly. That was fun, and we will.